If you select one of the cameras here, you are going to see the photo that creates the part of the model. It's like our first slide that the 3D models are created from all the photos around them. So it's why it's very important the quality and the consistency that you have taking the photos.
Hi, and welcome to the TD Meetup. My name is Alexander Richter. I'm a technical director for visual effects, animation, and games, and I work at companies like WeatherFX and Framestore on Avatar: The Way of Water and Monsters at Work. Welcome everyone to the TD Meetup. My name is Alexander Richter, and today we will talk about photogrammetry. And as basically now always, I'm not doing this alone. I'm joined today by Ramiro, who is a technical artist. He is someone who looks into 3D characters and environment models inside games, VR, and also film. And he is also someone who will explain and help me to explain how photogrammetry works, how we can optimize it, the basics behind it, and we'll show a little bit of a few examples how photogrammetry is actually used in professional environments. Ramiro will do the intro. He will give you an introduction into photogrammetry, the basics of photogrammetry, also how to optimize photogrammetry basically, and what software you have to use, and he will also show you how he worked with it himself. Then we move on to my part where I will show you one of my projects where I used photogrammetry in Animan, where we scanned a human, and then also show you a little bit how photogrammetry is used in the highest professional environments for video games and films. Last but not least, we do a Q&A. First, I do a quick Q&A with Ramiro where I ask a few questions to clarify the topic, and then we open up, as always, the Q&A to everyone. So you get the opportunity to ask us questions regarding photogrammetry and whatever you want to know about this topic. Great. That means we can start with the first element. Ramiro, the floor is yours in telling us what exactly is photogrammetry.
Thank you for the invitation to be here with you, Alexander. And also, hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today and talk about some exciting and versatile technologies in the world of 3D, that is photogrammetry. Through this talk, we are going to explore what is photogrammetry, where it's used, how you can start to using it, and the benefits of use. Let's get started. Well, what is photogrammetry? Photogrammetry is a technique that allows the creation of 3D models from 2D photographs by taking multiple images from different angles of an object of a surface. Specialized software can analyze these photos to generate an accurate three-dimensional model. This method has become very popular due to capture realistic details and texture, and also that is efficient and an accessible way. This technique is incredibly versatile and is used in several disciplines. For example, archaeology, that is usually to preserve digital environments or historical sites. In topography, to create maps and terrain models, and also in film and video games, to create characters or environments. In e-commerce, the person can have the products that consumers can view of any angle. Also, used in other many fields than medicine, architecture, or forensics. The photogrammetry offers several cases of benefits that make deal an option of various applications. It has to be high accuracy, capture or realistic texture. That it's important because they'll tell you a story. It's important because it's easy to use and any person can be doing right now photogrammetry. Also, this technique is easy and sharing to editing. The 3D models that you made, you can edit and play with that with texture and shapes. Also, it's non-invasive. Unlike the other methods, it doesn't require direct contact with the object, which is important from preserving the original condition of the object. And also, it's more much affordable option compared to other scanning methods. Next, we are going to compare the photogrammetry versus the manual mode. In production time, the photogrammetry is much faster. Also, the level of detail, the photogrammetry offers more precise and high details to the model and to the texture. These affect costs that in generally are more economical. Also, texture can be do it in an automatic way, and if you are making from zero or manual, you have to make this process separate. Also, this depends hiring 3D modelers and texture artists to create. But in manual mode, obviously, you are completely flexible, allow the creation, the design you make. And well, how we can start with the photogrammetry? The basic tools that you have to need is a camera or cell phone. We ensure that ideally you use one of good resolution because it's important to have a better image. To better image, it's better 3D models. Also, we recommend you have a color checker, lighting equipment, and polarization filters. The only basic tool that you have to make a photogrammetry is your camera or cell phone, but this equipment, we recommend you to have 100% quality. Also, the complementary tools are lens, turntable, tripod, memory cards, and scanning spread, and even drones if you need capture objects of area from the air. Well, here we can appreciate how you can use different tools needed from photogrammetry. For example, the color checker, which is essential for any method because it aligns the colors with the original. Here is the 3 video show the photogrammetry process using dimensions tools. For example, the lighting stuff, the tripod, the turntable, and in this case, an automatic rig. As we said, the image quality is crucial for having good results in 3D. So some key aspects that we have to keep in mind, they are this one. The resolution, you have a high resolution to capture all the details of your model or your scene. Also, the depth of field is very important because we have to ensure have the entire scene in focus to capture this data to the software. We recommend use F8 and F16 to increase the depth of field. Using a low noise, we can get better image quality and we can minimize the digital noise as the examples that we showed. Also, regarding the photo capture mechanics, some important aspects are stability. Stability is crucial for getting sharp image, especially during long exposures or low light conditions. You should capture image for multiple angles around the object. You have to ensure to have 60 or 80% between photos to ensure the software can process the image data correctly. You have to have a conscious distance between your photos to ensure to have all the information there. Also, as we said, lighting should be uniform and avoid the shadows. In photogrammetry, we use a technique called polarization. It's a phenomenon where light waves is usually vibrate in all directions, aligned in one direction. This can be achieved using polarizing filters that block light waves that doesn't allow in that direction. These filters are used on camera and light sources, creating a double polarization, and that can reduce the reflection and improve contrast. Here, we can appreciate how in the first photo, reflection casts noise, while the second one, the shine disappears. Even eliminating the background. This method is called the void method. Also, you have to make sure your white balance is accurate to capture your colors in true reality. These are different three methods as we see in the first slide, but I want to explain it more. As you see in the principle, all are the same in the three videos. The photos must be compared constantly at various levels to capture the entire object from different angles, and the lighting should avoid creating shadows. In reality, anyone with a camera and good lighting can achieve photogrammetry, as shown in the first example, which demonstrate the manual method. However, in the second one and third one, we can show with additional tools, we can create more accurate photographs. For instance, in the second one, stability is ensured with a tripod. In the third one, lighting and stability are improved and integrated. There are usually differences in results between doing manually and with help of tools, as human errors are reduced. However, we should not lose sight of the most important aspect of the entire process, having the best possible image, as this will determine the outcome. Well, also, having the process first to take our photos, we have to take these photos and process in different 3D programs. These 3D programs are in laptop, someone in computers and cell phones. The programs are Reality Capture, Polycam, Kitty Engine, Agisoft, and Adobe. Our favorite programs are Reality Capture because it's easy to handle and it's free. But we also use a lot Agisoft because it's a very good program to have better results and consistency. And well, in this video, we are going to show you how to process your image. So first of all, we have to have our folder to our image and put it in the input file. You have to go to the alignment tab to align your image. This alignment process can depend on your machine and the power of your machine. You have to be aware of that. And for example, we captured this apple with 180 cams, but in the process of the process, they only receive 176 camera, but you can compare the alignment settings for a better performance. If you are missing one camera, you have to go to the settings and see with that config, you have a better alignment process, right? Then we are ready to go and convert our image to a model. So we can go to a Mesh Model tab and click and hide detail. Also, this is depend in what PC you are. If you have an extra information that you doesn't like and you doesn't need in your model, you can go and go to filter selection to delete it and have it like only the result that you want. In this case, is this apple, right? In the reality capture, you have a lot of options. For example, you can hide your cameras, etc. And then we have to create the texture. You have to go to mesh model and texture button, and depends of your PC is the velocity, but in the texture of base of the photos that you put are going to create, okay? And well, right now we have a 3D model and texture with our model. So we are fine to export it to another program and play with our model and create something new, right? Also, in Reality Capture, have the option to be without the texture and the texture. If you select one of the cameras here, you are going to see the photo that creates the part of the model. It's like our first slide, that the 3D models are created from all the photos around them. So it's why it's very important the quality and the consistency that you have taken the photos. After processing the model, it's important to optimize. This is where the retopology comes in, which involves reducing the number of polygons in the model to make it more manageable. And no optimized model has a high number of polygons. If you see, this is all green because they have a little tiny millions polygons, so have almost is all in all the places. And here, the vertices are in color green and see that are very reduced model, okay? It maintains the fidelity in this way of the scan, but it's very heavy and difficult to handle. And in this hand, an optimal model reduces unnecessary polygons and makes ideal for real-time rendering and require a higher efficiency. And we can use it as video games, augmented reality, and virtual real applications. In addition, the retopology, it's also important to work in the texturing. In this example, these all image are already our 3D model. So the optimized model can be receive high quality texture generate from your photos. It's why important have a good quality in our photos because imports in the quality of the 3D model and the quality of the texture. And also, this prepare from animation to VR and augmented reality use. You can use your models to make characters, to go to the environments. In this case, we used to make a scene inside the Apple. So you can, the imagination is the limit. And well, let's look some example of how photogrammetry in the industry are used. For example, the new game Black Myth Gone use a lot of environments make it and using photogrammetry from his design. Also, National Geographic use a lot this technique because it's to use to preserve historical spaces and objects. And also, in the famous Star Wars of Mandalorian, is used to create all these amazing environments that we see in camera. Also, in e-commerce and commercials, you can increase your sales seeing your 3D models in 360 way. It's a better view of your products or commercials. And well, today we talk about methods for scanning standard objects, but there are a special process, including aerial scanning, combining with laser scannings and human scannings. To delve deeper into these topics, I would like to hand the floor over Alexander Richard, who will share his experience working with human scans and their impact of the industry.
Thank you very much, Ramiro. So that was basically the introduction. So for everyone who's maybe less familiar with the process of photogrammetry, but also what I loved about Ramiro's part was that he also broke it down into certain elements, basically. So you can also see that you can't just use your phone for the process, but obviously we can do more complex. And that's the part where I come in, and I want to show you a few examples of how this can look like in a bigger scale, and afterwards we go into the Q&A. Something reminded me when you talked about non-destructive or non-invasive elements. There was actually an example where a video game helped restoring important building in Paris. Some of you maybe remember the time of Assassin's Creed Unity in 2014, which was during the French Revolution. So a big part of it is Notre Dame. And it was the time where Ubisoft was actually trying to be consistent with history. Like in Assassin's Creed, they removed the crossbow from the trailer because it was not actually in that time period. And at the same time, they had this thing. So 2014, they did like scan Notre Dame. And what happened a few years later in 2019, Notre Dame actually burned down to some degree because they had this scan stat. They supported the reconstruction team of Notre Dame with their mega photogrammetry scans, basically. And that allowed the team to know, especially when it comes to fine details, you know, small sculptures, small, you know, elements and facade, how to do or reconstruct that. And this is an example where literally video games come back to real life and you know, kind of get, and you can also see if you do it right, you get the detail that you can literally reconstruct it in real life. Let me go into another example and more in terms of film. So there was a project that I did with two directors. It's called Animan, and the main idea of the project was we wanted to have the Muybridge experience. If you remember Muybridge, it was famous for the horse riding. It was like over 100 years ago. And it was one of the first moving pictures in history, basically. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to have a human move like an animal in a Muybridge environment. So what we need to do is, A, we needed to capture the movements of animals, and B, we needed to have as realistic as possible human. So we set out to do exactly that. We only had 3 months. So, and we were not really texture artists, modeling artists. We are basically a team of 3 plus 3 producers helping us with all this organization, basically. So we needed to find a way. And one of the ways that we came up with was photogrammetry. And this is actually how it looked like. Basically, this is one of the directors, by the way. And we came up with a system, and obviously this is not you know, something you can do at home. Basically, this is a little bit more. It's literally a studio, but this was during my time at the Film Academy, basically. And so this also has a lot of the things that Ramiro just talked about. So let's break it down and look about the decisions that we made. This was the model, the perfect, you know. So this was the model that we actually created previously before the shoot to understand what we want. And you can see a lot of the things that Ramiro mentioned, how photogrammetry is done well. And so that's what we were looking for. You can see here, we have 5 cameras. We have a human a little bit elevated. We have rails around him. We have green screen around him, and some light and so on. So here are a few pictures of how this looks like in practice at the end of the day. So the idea was basically we wanted to have a realistic human. So first one, what we wanted to do is the more cameras we have, the less movement there will be, because we can shoot faster. Because instead of doing, you know, the like 100 photos with one camera, we can do 500 photos in the same time, basically. So that's one of the reasons. Less shaking, less anything, basically. Important there, we need to use the same cameras. We need to use the same lenses. So everything is, you know, not warped or whatever. And that's why we have these like X form. We wanted the parallaxes. So we wanted to see maybe a little bit from above and a little bit from below, a little bit from the side. So this allows us to give more angle and allow, like, you know, when we transform it into 3D, have a little bit more than just a flat image, basically. The more angles you have, the more you can go to 3D. Then we created the round rails, and it comes back to what Ramiro mentioned as, for example, the better to keep the same distance. So everything is a little bit from the same distance. So the software has an easier time to understand where something is. So that was one of the reasons why we had the rails. And also stability, obviously, you know, you don't move and shake and whatever yourself. So the object can shake and you can shake. That's not good for the results. Then light is super important for multiple reasons. Obviously, if you don't have enough light, the camera cannot capture enough information. That's the biggest problem, probably. Clear and bright. But it's important to have soft light, not strong light, because with strong light, you introduce obviously shadows, but also you destroy information. So if it's too strong, you literally just see white, maybe worst case, at some certain elements. So it has to be soft light, but strong enough. So you can see here we have a light at the top, we have lights at the bottom. So we try to shine it out as much as possible from all angles, so there's no shadows and everything is relatively big. The green screen idea was actually a little bit to remove information. So before we put this images into the software, a little bit what Ramiro did with the black background, we add green screen, and so we key out the green screen in a software, previously like Nuke, and bring it then into software, so we have less information in the image. So like 50% of the image is empty, and the software can focus only on the human mostly, basically. And then we needed to add the tripod, because if you stand there for like a minute, you will start to shake. And obviously we wanted the TA pose, so we also can see around the arms and whatever. So that's one thing. And then we added a few extra photos for the hands, the feet, and the face, because we needed some extra details and so on. So that was basically the main idea. And this is how it looks like in terms of the capturing. So we did like 2 spins, one more like top, one a little bit more lower. And we had, like, as you can see, 5 cameras, and each one captured certain elements of the model at the end of the day. And that is the kind of information that we had then that we can bring into the software. This was the results that we had. So as Ramiro just showed with the apple, this was what we had. There we brought the human in. You can see most of it is gone through keying. We need still to remove a few things. We added it there. And at the end of the day, to be totally honest, we were not super crazy about the result. It was not mind-blowing at the end of the day, We will just zoom in and you will see it's not the best model ever made, It looks a little bit like video game-ish to some degree. And there is obviously some, bad elements in there. You can see here. So it was okay. For the effort, it was probably a little bit not good enough, from what we actually wanted to do. But since this was literally a 3-month project and it was our first try with photogrammetry on that level, I think it was still good enough. And but important, we did tests before. We tried things out before. We played with aperture, lights, and everything. So this was not our first try at the end of the day. So it's very important when you go to the finish line of doing actual photogrammetry that you play before and you understand how it works actually to really do a good job at the end of the day. So this was how it looks like in when we brought the model basically untouched into the scene. Looks fine enough, it's not the worst. And this was how it looks like at the end, with a little bit of tweaking and, fixing a little bit, a few issues and stuff like that. So not the best, especially I did the shading and the lighting and whatever. I can still see, you can still work, subsurface scattering probably a little bit more and a little bit that. But at the end of the day, it's good enough. And if you think about it, that we literally didn't create anything of that, basically. We were not modelers, we were not texturers. The only thing we did was lighting and shading in itself, and we used the information. So there was still a lot of work to clean it up and make it look good. But if you have no skill in that category, this was definitely better than starting from nothing at the end of the day. And this is more the angle that we wanted. So even though the result was not perfect or whatever, but from the time and the skill set that we had, it gave us an opportunity to create something that we would not be able to do. And then I wanted to quickly show you the making of Animan, which is actually one of my favorite projects that I worked on. Yeah, basically that was Animan. It was a fantastic project. Again, it was mostly free people plus literally produce. We had as many producers as actually artists in this whole thing, because we had to, or as you saw, we need to get to all the animals. We get to get all the stuff. We had like 20 GoPros for the. So the whole project was about capturing, and the two levels of capturing a model and texture, and capturing movement. That was the two things, because also we're not animators. So we replaced creation through capture. And obviously it was a pain and a lot of things didn't work. And at the end of the day, the making of is better than the actual product. It was a really interesting project that really made us more understand how capture itself works and where it's basically aligned. And finally, I just want to show you how this goes into the final boss level. So this is how it can look like into the bigger productions, for example, where you have 50 cameras basically, and they just do one flash, and then they capture multiple elements, and they also have polarization and whatnot at the same time to capture more details, and that allows them to do multiple things, including poses. So they can, create the main poses of something, and it will be easier for animators and whatever to create, or maybe the poses are the final thing, So that is the thing, and it's very important for video games nowadays, but also even for Digidouble, if you Curious Case of Benjamin Button with Brad Pitt, the aging and whatnot, that's very important. And you can see also if it's done a little bit more sophisticated, better than what we did, you can see that the level of detail is even higher in terms of the displacement map at the end and the texture map at the end. So there is a certain level that you can reach. You just have to define how far you need to go. But in theory, your phone could be resulting in the thing, depending on what it is, depending how detailed it is. If you make a game in PS2 graphics, totally fine. If you make something in the background or whatever, probably your phone would be even more or less enough to do the job, basically. And that was the main idea of showing about photogrammetry, is to give you an understanding of what photogrammetry is, and also show a little bit how this can work, can go up to this craziness, basically. And you can see how many photos you need to take to cover like even a face, basically, and so on. Okay, before we open up the Q&A for everyone, I just had a few questions that I wanted to talk with Ramiro. So to cover a few things that I think are important to understand photogrammetry a little bit better. So Ramiro, first question for you, to get a little bit deeper into photogrammetry. Why should we use photogrammetry? What would you say? You mentioned like a few elements that are important, but where do you see like the big strength in photogrammetry versus manual, model and texture creation?
Yes, I think the most important on photogrammetry is the able that you can preserve details from the realness. So I think in 100 years in the future, maybe these things doesn't like exist more, like the cathedral. So if we conserve these 3D models in real life, we can use it as inspiration, as art, as part of our video games, as part of our movies. So I think photogrammetry is a tool that helps us a lot to do our lives easier, to doesn't make the things from zero, and also show the people how the models can look at every angle.
What would you say when working with photogrammetry is the biggest challenge that anyone who goes into that level, instead of like, oh yeah, instead of like, instead of modeling or texturing, like, what, I'm just do a photogrammetry. What would you say is the typical like big issue that you encounter if you go into that?
I think the biggest issue is the image quality. I think the people that do photogrammetry in the first time like doesn't have the importance of that, but in reality it's the most important information that you make this thing happen. So if your image it doesn't good, if your image in your object doesn't looks good or your texture looks strange, your model have it going to have that errors. So I think the big challenge is take good photos and good information to go to the software and produce that model.
Which basically doesn't only mean resolution, it means, like you mentioned, lighting and, consistency and certain distance and so on. Yeah. Quality, like I kind of mentioned that, but how good is the quality for films and video games? How far can you go? Like a main character, something literally in the front, or is it still more used in the background and like kind of secondary?
Actually, photogrammetry have the potential to be in front of a movie or make an asset, a principal asset in a video game. Obviously, it depends in what gear you are using, but actually, we use a lot of cell phones to create our photogrammetry job. Our Apple that we show in the presentation, there are photos with a Google Pixel phone. So there are a good quality of that. Obviously, if you want to increase that, we you have to use other cameras, other special cameras. Obviously, in big films and video games have a lot of more economical way to have these things. So the quality it's top quality to do it. For this example, well, there are a lot of cameras, and I know that these cameras are high resolution. So from film industry and video game industry doesn't have problems to produce a high quality 3D model and high quality texture.
Especially, I think of like Call of Duty and stuff. They look relatively realistic nowadays, the faces and stuff. How do you deal with shadows? Because it's obviously a big problem for information on one side, but also for the texture. You don't want to have baked shadows. It's not like a video game in the 2000s or whatever.
It depends if you are making a photogrammetry inside of your house or your studio, or you are doing it in a street or outdoor, right?
Mhm.
So in outdoor, I recommend to do the photogrammetry job in days that doesn't the sun goes like too heavy. So in clouds day are perfect to capture a photogrammetry because doesn't cause like harsh shadows. And in a studio on or in a house, as you said, I recommend soft lights to take the photographs and avoid any harsh shadows.
Yeah, I also saw this kind of ring lights basically that are great for, especially for probably more for like, smaller objects, to keep a certain amount of light wherever you move. So basically, where you are, there is just like a spotlight basically coming from, so there is no shadows in that area.
And actually, this kind of technology, they like go with the light and replace the light with polarized light. So even you are like out, you can make work with polarization because the light of the flash replace the light in 1 second, and you have like the result without reflection or shadows.
So last question before we dive into public Q&A. How to do direct assets, because that was something that we noticed when we worked with it, when we did photogrammetry of things that were like a dark, could be a dark jacket, but could be, dark headphones, basically, for example. And that is the biggest problem actually for photogrammetry, because black has a little bit of no information, as similar as pure white, basically. So what would be the best way to work with dark objects at the end of the day?
Well, I think the best of do it is try to have your background as the most different color. As example, if I want to photogrammetry these earphones, I will do background that could be white to have, like in the photo, understanding which is the object that you want to capture. In photogrammetry, it's important that you have to tell to the computer which are your object, right? So it's like having a paper, and this background is on only white, and if your object is black, that try to help the computer that analyze that this is your object. So isolate with bright backgrounds are the solution with these dark objects.
For guys, just a few notes before we dive into Q&A. There's a making of Animan. That was the project that I just showed, where we looked into how to motion capture animals and how to capture a human. Again, I wouldn't say it's the best thing ever in history, but I think we learned a lot of things of doing it. I think definitely in terms of capturing motion capture animals, there's barely any information outside there. So it was an interesting way of putting a GoPros around it. That's also, but also all the findings that we found out how to do it, and in the future would do it even better. There's an interesting talk at the GDC about Star Wars Battlefront and the art of photogrammetry. They looked into objects and stuff like that for them to make it as realistic as possible. It was really, really cool. Also, Ramiro's team, as he showed in his example of the 3 levels, they're building currently a machine called Ansus machine. They're just soon will open a Kickstarter. So if you're interested, want to be part of it, or you want to have more questions about what they do, or maybe you just have questions to photogrammetry because you want to try it out for yourself or your studio, feel free to reach out to him personally or to this email there. And since photogrammetry has a lot of scripting elements, if you do it correctly, it's a pipeline work. You should not do it, especially in a project, throughout, manually. You should write scripts to help you to go, even like keying, hundreds of photos sometimes can be a pain in the ass. That's something. Feel free to join our Python courses. We have one in October, about every 3 months. Python for Maya, Python for Nuke, Max, and Houdini. So if you're interested to, get a little bit more of a technical field, which is, if you go into motion capture, if you go into photogrammetry, it's all kind of driven by technical understanding. If you look into copycat, if you look into motion capture or photogrammetry, it's all about, okay, this is the thing that I want, how do I get there? And you have to try and to understand. It's like all this is about understanding and tweaking, basically, and scripting can play an essential role for that, especially in a production environment. Basically, this is like a software is basically always an important part of that. Okay, that's basically from us, and we feel free to open the meetup to everyone else.
Thank you very much for all the information. That was really, really nice. And well, I am Hans. I am the CEO and co-founder of Eugenia. And Eugenia is a company specialized in virtualizing humans. So we have a photogrammetry rig. And sometimes when we need to travel, we need to think about weight. And most of the time we cannot take all the lighting. So we are making some testing related on how to polarize the flashes. So I don't know if you have any experience doing that.
Well, in our machine that we create in Ansus, we take these lights and put it filters of polarized light. And actually, it's only one paper of polarized and one light that it's this weight. So if you have problems like with the weight of flashes or rings that are too weight, you can do your own like polarized filters with lights that are more like lightweight and more compact. We make 3D printing like mounts for our lamps, so we can get the polarized without having this big ring flash that you see in their examples. So yeah, you can adapt your lights to be more lightweight to do the job.
Well, thank you very much. And yes, well, the main problem is that we have a 360 rig. Most of the time when we try to polarize flashes, well, as you know, you need to have like a correct direction of the light and the lens to get everything polarized. So that's the main challenge here. But yes, I can reach you, Ramiro, and it will be really nice to talk to you.
Yes, for sure.
Maybe that would be the second project, Ramiro. After a successful Kickstarter, you can do a portable, set for characters and stuff like that. And it would be like bigger. Basically, you take the one small one and you make it like 360, just like the Elon Musk did with the rocket, like Falcon, instead of like Falcon 1. Like, what about we do Falcon like 9? Just the same, just 9 times, basically, like that.
Yeah, actually, in the team in Ansus, we are thinking about a lot of more machines to help the automate this process, because I think it's important to try to achieve a better results with the less time. So this is our main focus. So yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Angie had a question.
What do you believe is the future potential of photogrammetry? Well, I think the future is right now in all the industry. I think the photogrammetry using, as we said, in archaeology, medicine, film industry. So I think the future of the photogrammetry is a long future, because they have a lot of potentials of use. And well, we have a lot of assets or objects. We are surrounded from objects. I'm 100% sure. So I think the potential of grabbing one object and throw it to the computer and having in 3D model, I think this potential can be game changer with with these glasses that we are going to have with augmented reality. In the future, we are going to have a lot of models around us, and also in our life. So photogrammetry is going to be there in the future.
Yeah, I also think, like, in terms of a realistic production, I think at the end of the day, I see it more from the side of like a production workflow. So I see it like the better technology, the better our like phones and stuff become, the more like literally I can literally stand up and just photogrammetry whatever I want. If I make a game or a film and I need some kind of object being part as explosion or a placeholder or whatever, or like half scene in the scene, I, as a non-modeler, non-texturer, could potentially create a decent enough model with at-home remedies that I can use in a realistic VFX or games project. Obviously, if it's stylized, maybe I have to push it, but even then I can still push the textures to, with filters and whatever. So I can see photogrammetry becoming a more standard way of modeling and texturing, especially for realistic stuff, basically, where it's just easier, especially in terms of life. It's not the most important thing in the level or in the scene. Then I mean, it's literally anyone with basic understanding of photogrammetry could make an object, an apple, as you showed. Like, obviously it takes still time, but someone who doesn't know how to model or texture would take forever to make even an apple, basically. So there is a certain amount of adjusting skills. Like, AI sometimes helps you to create things that would take forever for someone who's not capable. Like scripting, automate steps. I think photogrammetry can, as you said, a little bit make things more realistic, preserve realism a little bit, and also at the same time adjust for skill lacking. Like, if you're not modeler or texturer, you can use photogrammetry to do that. Next question, Wes, who cannot speak. Thank you both for your presentation. Are there any limitations with photogrammetry we should be aware of before we try it ourselves? And secondly, how hard was it to resist recreating scenes from the Matrix?
Thank you, Bish. And yes, there are limitations outdoor. I think the limitation right now it's the material of the object, of the environment that you want to do. For example, transparent objects or glasses objects, they are very difficult to make in photogrammetry. The good thing is that new technologies are coming out, calling like Gaussian splatting, NERF, and this technology are helping like resolve these things that are impossible in photogrammetry, because are a different way to do it, a different technology, but it's are like the same process of photogrammetry. But yeah, I think the main limitation are the materials, and also how to capture that. So I think the mode of capture, obviously it doesn't, in manual mode you have to take 100, 200, 300 photos. So obviously it take times and take effort. So it's why there are a lot of options to automate that process.
Really, really interesting, because on one side, photogrammetry fails at things like shiny and stuff, or it's like really bad because of the shininess of the object. The more shinier, the more problematic. While we now have the volumes that actually do the thing, like, Mandalorian was an example where if you have a knight walking around in shiny armor, suddenly the volume can give you realistic reflection, so you have not the pain in the ass compositing and whatever replacement at the end of the day. So we have certain elements that don't feel like they're connected, but they're actually very connected, like, where you can use the volume as a replacement, where you would like real life record something and use the volume to create the shininess correctly, while you use photogrammetry maybe less for this shiny object because you will have a lot of problems, but then you can use them in all the other surroundings. Like, you can literally have the background castle or the background, terrain, photogram it with drones and whatnot, and then put that in the background. That actually creates the shininess on the armor, maybe. So there is this level. But yeah, I think shininess is a good example. A dark object I mentioned is a bad problematic thing. The darker something is, the less information it can give you. There's a level where it's like it collects the light, and then it's basically like you cannot see anything, basically. And as you saw in our example, even though we did plan everything like really well and it looks really professional, the results were relatively okay just at the end of the day, So I think that was a little bit disappointing, because I remember when I did photograph a big stone to sit down, I actually had a little bit better results than what we ended up doing with the human. There is a little bit of this inconsistency coming out of this, like with copycat, where you think you optimize copycat to process it better in machine learning, and then the results are worse. So I think in photogrammetry, there is a certain aspect of like inconsistency, where suddenly the software will not recognize the camera or flip everything for some random reason, and your whole information is broken, or it's not as good as you thought it should be actually from what you did. So there is a certain elements of like wonkiness, I would say, also, that is a little bit limiting, I think.
It's why it's very important to have like conscious results in your photos, because when you like know all these problems, when you go to the 3D software and put it and goes like crazy, you be aware, because how to do the light, how to focus, how sharp the image have to be. So obviously, when you go to the 3D software, you can present like a lot of problems, but with the correct like guidelines, you avoid to have a lot of that problems there.
By the way, this is the closest that we got to the Matrix, I think. I don't know. Someone randomly said, "How about we do this kind of parameter?" Actually, the graphic on this image reminds me extremely on Max Payne 1 or 2, where it has this like photo, but a little bit squashed. Feeling where it's not 100% on the model, but it is a photo, but it's like a little bit like distorted because the geometry fights the texture a little bit. This reminded me of this a little bit.
This looks like fun to do, but hard to do.
Pretty easy at the end of the day, but yeah, someone just randomly, and you can see here the paths of the cameras. They are very consistently like rounded around. But again, I would say maybe it was even too far for that or something. There was definitely a few things that I felt as a much simpler system with more testing would have better result than this. I think the lighting was great. I think the camera setup was unnecessarily complicated at the end of the day. Yeah, the green screen was okay, but I don't think it was the most important thing. I think also if you do green screen, you should probably light the green screen. I think that is always a big thing. Like that green screen is really like bright, like it, because the green screen easily has shades, and that's a real problem for keying, obviously.
A lot of things can be like easier or in the compared way. So yeah, I think the photo rigs can be like really an achieve goal.
You see a lot of people doing crazy things, and for example, if you look at this image, it looks super crazy what we did. But what I care personally about is the result. So even though I really enjoyed what we did and it learned a lot of things, if I see that and I would see our result, I was like, okay, that was like overkill for what you actually got out of this. You know, you could have done this much simpler, probably at home with something more stable, like, you know, a tripod on a skateboard or whatever. Basically, good camera, a lot of close shots, a lot of stability when moving, good lighting, and you probably got like with 20% of what we actually used, probably 200% of the results or something like that. So you don't have to do this. And obviously, again, if you have a little bit of the cash, let's say you make a board game or you say make a video game, you theoretically could search for a motion for a photogrammetry studio, just hire them, pay them like whatever they need, like $1,000 or whatever, and just have your model done with textures, with poses, with bring all your actors, bring all your stuff into this, bam, 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 one day, and then you have your, I don't know, 50 objects, 10 characters, and you don't have to deal with it at all. Basically, they will prepare everything. Obviously, you have to have the cash for that, but sometimes it can be worth it that, or obviously you can download. I just heard that Adobe gives the mega scans for free now because they changed its platform.
Well, I want to share you like a link that is from Gabe Academy that have a lot of courses, and I also know that they have a talk with you, Alexander. But
Yes,
this is a really good blog how you capture a photo and how do it better, like results. They talk about polarizations, filters, white balance. So this, if you want like a really good blog to how to take photographs, this is the blog that I recommend you.
Yeah, if you're interested, we actually did an episode with Jahirul on the 21 Artist Show. I found it on my YouTube channel. We talked about how to learn faster, which is basically, you know, like if you learn photogrammetry, how to do that. Basically, you know, don't feel restricted. But yeah, obviously his blog is very interesting. A little bit hard to look into. I found it very hard to find information sometimes in the complexity of the structure. But the greatest part about his like website is it's very detail oriented, and it's also very, very practical. It's not just, you know, blog articles who just bullshit you their way through information and just summarize another video or whatever. It's literally something he looks at, he tests, he touches it, and he goes it with a mindset of a newbie who is not like, you know, like has some preconditions. So because it's more like, okay, I have no idea, how do I do this? And then he just figures out the correct settings. And so it's the most like hardcore data that you probably can find on the internet, basically, at the end of the day. So that's one of the great things about it. Any final words from you, Ramiro?
Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation. I happen to be here and have the talk with you. And well, I also want to thank Angie Becerra and Juan Perales, that it's my team at Ansus Studio. And yeah, for making all this possible. And yeah, I want to you follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook as Ansus Studio, and my LinkedIn personal is there also too. And yeah, if you have questions and or you want to talk about more photogrammetry, well, I'm open to do it. And yeah, really thank you, Alexander, and thank you for your attention.
We can do a giveaway. So if you remember Ramiro's full name, all four elements of it, he will give you one of his tools for free, basically. Now it's your chance, basically. Hopefully this was interesting for everyone, from completely beginners to people who were just kind of like started into going into this field, or maybe you are already someone who's working in visual effects, animation, and games, and this is something where you're like, hey, actually, why do I do things? Why I'm not just scanning things, you know? It's basically like, why do I, like, you have a piece of paper and you write it down instead of just putting it into a photocopier and just, you know, copy it. Why do I do this? So it's, for some people, it can be, it is a very interesting level. It is very similar to things like Copycat. It can be relatively simple to get into the basics, you know, making some photo, throwing it into a software, getting results. And then the iteration is when it starts to become harder, because then it starts to find out, okay, resolutions, polarizations, and camera and angles and parallaxy and whatever. And then it starts to kind of adjust to the level that you want. If you want the higher the level that you want, the more you have to know, basically. If you want just some basic objects in the background, then at the end of the day, you can just literally probably take your iPhone and you probably will get something that will be decent enough that you throw at the background, as long as you don't use the original file in the background with 1 million, 2 million, 50 million polygons. That would be a nightmare for every system, which I'm pretty sure happened 100%, even in professional games. As far as I know, there was a game where like one door or something was heavier than the whole level or something because they forgot to change it. So that can happen, but it is a very interesting thing because it has this like level where you can't start simple. Everyone can do photogrammetry. Software is free. You can capture with anything, and the result will be decent enough. But the higher level you go, the more you need to know, and then you should kind of like watch this, Google, watch the Academy and so on to find out the details. Ask Ramiro, you know, here coaching, or get his tool to help you with the like object capture or something like that. And I think that is what we wanted to show today, basically, to everyone. Next month we will do Comfy UI in Nuke. Tim Ariopal will be there, who's testing this out. So keep on the lookout for that. There will be an event, and you know, just if you follow me already, you will probably see. I welcome you to join us live and also watch the previous episodes, and I'll see you on our next TD Meetup.